Hello, darlings. I am so sorry that I had it all set up and I accidentally clicked the wrong button. I clicked done and I needed to go live. So hopefully that you are still here. I'll give you a few minutes to be here. Let's see. Let me go over here to the Book of Faces. I can't actually share this video because I'm still in Facebook prison. So one moment. Okay, let me go over here and just tell people to come and join me. Um, oh, but you know what? I can share it. Let me copy it. Where is my library? Your videos. That's not it. Well, that's the clock. Hello, good evening. Thank you. I'm very well. Thank you. Hello, Lauren Morgan Richards. Hello, my friend. Let me find out. I don't know why I can never see my video. Let's see. Oh, here we go. It says I'm live. Let me go over here. We'll share that one. I'll copy that link and then I'll go over here to the Book of Faces and we'll paste it here. Join me live for YouTube for story time. And then one more to share. Hello, Mary Jane. Good to see you. Let me go over here to the business side. Let me see. And we'll just go ahead and share that one. So I had it all typed out and I had all of these lovely, glorious hashtags. And then I hit the done button and not the other one. And I ended up by deleting all of it. So I had to go back really quickly and get it all done. Thank you. I know we've only got 7 people here right now. Hello, those of you who are watching in the future. Hello, hello, hello. So I was away last week because I was in New York. I mean, I was outside of New York. I was back in LA, and I was in upstate New York, and I was in Pittsburgh. I was in all kinds of places. So there is that. Anyway, I think without further ado, my loves, I don't really have too much going on, excepting for thank you for those of you who watched Ghost Adventures. That was fun. That was a really it was a powerful episode for me. So thank you for watching that. Those of you who are watching the Witches Movie Coven, thank you so much. Also, thank you to all of my viewers like you who continue to support this small channel where we discuss all kinds of things paranormal. And lately, we just read classic books. But I appreciate you. I love you. I would read even if it were nobody here, but I'm glad that I have company. It makes it not so lonely. Anyway, my darlings, I guess without further ado, I should go ahead and begin reading because I don't really have many announcements. So, without further ado, chapter 6. Oh, I'm sorry, chapter 19. Diamond's Friends. One day, when old Diamond was standing with his nose in his bag between Pall Mall and Cockspur Street, and his master was reading the newspaper on the box of his cab, which was the last of the good many in the row, little Diamond got down for a run. For his legs were getting cramped with sitting, and, first of all, he strolled with his hands in his pockets up to the crossing, where the girl and her broom were to be found in all weathers. Just as he was going to speak to her, a tall gentleman stepped upon the crossing. He was pleased to find it so clean, for the streets were muddy, and he had nice boots on, so he put his hand in his pocket and gave the girl a penny. But when she gave him a sweet smile in return, and made him a pretty curtsy, he looked at her again and said, "Where do you live, my child?" "Paradise Row," she answered, "next door to Adam and Eve down there, the area." "Whom do you live with?" he asked. My wicked old granny, she replied. You shouldn't call your granny wicked, said the gentleman. But she is, said the little girl, looking up confidently in his face. If you don't believe me, you can come and look at her. The words sounded rude, but the girl's face looked so simple that the gentleman saw she did not mean to be rude and became still more interested in her. Still, you shouldn't say so, he insisted. Shouldn't I? Everybody calls her wicked old granny, even them that's as wicked as her. You should hear her swear. There's nothing like it in the row. Indeed, I assure you, sir, there's ne'er a one of them can shut my granny up once she begins and gets right a going. You must put her in passion first, you know. It's no good till you do that. She's so old now. Now she do make them laugh, to be sure. Although she called her wicked, the child spoke so plainly to indicate pride in her granny's preeminence in swearing. The gentleman looked very grave to hear her, for he was sorry that such a nice little girl should be in such a bad keeping. But he did not know what to say next, and stood for a moment with his eyes on the ground. When he lifted them, he saw the face of Diamond looking up in his. Please, sir, said Diamond, her granny is very cruel to her sometimes, and shuts her out in the streets at night if she happens to be late. Is this your brother? Asked the gentleman of the girl. No, sir. How does he know your grandmother, then? He does not look like one of her sort. Oh, no, sir, he's a good boy, quite. Here she tapped her forehead with her finger in significant manner. What do you mean by that? Asked the gentleman, while Diamond looked on smiling. The cabbies call him God's baby, she whispered. He's not right in the head, you know. A tile loose? Still Diamond, though he heard every word and understood it too, kept on smiling. What could it matter what people called him so long as he did nothing he ought not do? And, besides, God's baby was surely the best of names. Well, my little man, and what can you do? Asked the gentleman, turning towards him, just for the sake of saying something. Drive a cab, said Diamond. Good, and what else? He continued, for accepting what the girl had said. He regarded the still sweetness of Diamond's face as a sign of silliness, and wished to be kind to the poor little fellow. Nurse a baby, said Diamond. Well, and what else? Clean father's boots, and make him a bit of toast for his tea. You're a useful little man, said the gentleman. What else can you do? Not much that I know of, said Diamond. I can't curry a horse, except somebody puts me on his back, so I don't count that. Can you read? No, but my mother can and father can, and they're going to teach me some day soon. Well, here's a penny for you. Thank you, sir. And when you have learned to read, come to me, and I'll give you sixpence and a book with fine pictures in it. Please, sir, where am I to come? Asked Diamond, who was too much of a man of the world not to know that he must have the gentleman's address before he could go and see him. You're you're no such silly, thought he, as he put his hand in his pocket and brought out a card. There, he said, your father will be able to read that and tell you where to go. Yes, sir, thank you, sir, said Diamond, and put the card in his pocket. The gentleman walked away, but turning round a few paces off, saw Diamond give his penny to the little girl, and walking slower, heard him say, I've got a father and a mother and a little brother, and you've got nothing but a wicked old granny. You may have my penny. The girl put it beside the other in her pocket, the only trustworthy article of dress she wore. Her grandmother always took care that she had a stout pocket. Is she as cruel as ever? Asked Diamond. Much the same, but I gets more coppers now than I used to, and I can get summats to eat, and take Browns enough home besides to keep her from grumbling. It's a good thing she's so blind, though. Why? Asked Diamond. 'Cause if she is as sharp in the eyes as she used to be, she would find out I never eats her broken wittles, and then she'd know as I must get something somewheres. Doesn't she watch you then? Oh, course she do. Don't she just? But I make believe and drop it in my lap and then hitch it into my pocket. What would she do if you found you out? She'd never give me no more. But you don't want it. Yes, I do want it. Why do you why do you do with it then? Give it to Cripple Jim. Who's Cripple Jim? A boy in the row. His mother broke his leg when he was a kid, so he's never come to much, but he's a good boy, is Jim, and I love Jim dearly. I always keeps him off a penny for Jim, least ways as often as I can. But there, I must sweep again, for them busses makes no end of dirt. Diamond, Diamond, cried his father, who asked, afraid he might get no good by talking to the girl, and Diamond obeyed, and got up again upon the box. He told his father about the gentleman, and what he had promised him if he would learn to read, and showed him the gentleman's card. Why, it's not too many doors from the Mews, said his father, giving him back the card. Take care of it, my boy, for it may lead to something. God knows in these hard times a man wants as many friends as he's ever likely to get. Haven't you got enough friends, father? Asked Diamond. Well, I have no right to complain, but the more the better, you know. Just let me count, said Diamond, and he took his hands from his pockets, and spreading out the fingers of his left hand began to count, beginning at the thumb. There's mother first, and then there's baby, and then there's me. Next there's old Diamond and the cab. No, I won't count the cab, for it never looks at you, and when Diamond's out of the shafts, it's nobody. Then there's the man that drinks next door, and his wife and his baby. They're no friends of mine, said his father. Well, they're friends of mine, said Diamond. His father laughed. Much good they'll do you, he said. How do you know they won't? Returned Diamond. Well, go on, said his father. Then there's Jack and Mr. Stonecrop, and dearie me, not to have mentioned Mr. Coleman and Mrs. Coleman, and Miss Coleman and Mrs. Crump, and then there's the clergyman that spoke to me in the garden the other day. The tree was blown down. Oh, what's his name? I don't know his name. Where does he live? I don't know. How can you count him then? He did talk to me, and very kind like too. His father laughed again. Why, child, you're just counting everybody you know. That don't make 'em friends. Don't it? I thought it did. Well, but they shall be my friends. I shall make 'em. How will you do that? They can't help themselves. If they would, if I choose to be their friend, you know they can't prevent me. Then there's that girl at the crossing. A fine set of friends you do have, to be sure, Diamond. Surely she's a friend anyhow, father. If it hadn't been for her, you would never have got Mrs. Coleman and Miss Coleman to carry home. His father was silent, for he saw that Diamond was right, and was ashamed to find himself more ungrateful than he had thought. Then there's the new gentleman, Diamond went on. If he do say as he say, interposed his father. And why shouldn't he? I dare say sixpence ain't too much for him to spare, but I don't quite understand, father. Is nobody your friend but the one that does something for you? No, I won't say that, my boy. You would have to leave out baby then. Oh, no, I shouldn't. Baby can laugh in your face and crow in your ears and make you feel so happy. Call you that nothing, father? The father's heart was fairly touched now. He made no answer to his last appeal, and Diamond ended off with saying, and there's the best of mine come yet, and that's you, Daddy, except to be mother, you know. You're my friend, Daddy, ain't you? And I'm your friend, ain't I? And God for us all, said his father. And they were both silent, that was very solemn. Chapter 20. Diamond learns to read. Hello, Catherine. The question of the tall gentleman as to whether Diamond could read or not set his father thinking it was high time he could, and soon as old Diamond was suppered and bedded, he began to task that very night. But it was not much of a task to Diamond, for his father took his lesson book, those very rhymes his mother had picked up on the seashore, and Diamond was not beginning too soon. He learned very fast indeed. Within a month he was able to spell out most of the verses for himself. But he had never come upon the poem he thought he had heard his mother read from it that day. He had looked through and through the book several times after he knew the letters and a few words, fancying he could tell the look of it, but had always failed to find one more like it than another. So he wisely gave up the search till he could really read. Then he resolved to begin at the beginning and read them all straight through. This took him nearly a fortnight. When he had almost reached the end, he came upon the following verses, which took his fancy much, although they were certainly not very much like those he was in search of. Little Boy Blue. Little Boy Blue lost his way in the wood. Sing apples and cherries, roses and honey. He said, I would not go back if I could. It's all so jolly and funny. He sang, this wood is all my own, apples and cherries, roses and honey. So here I'll sit, like a king on my throne, all so jolly and funny. A little snake crept out of the tree, apples and cherries, roses and honey. Lie down at my feet, little snake, said he, all so jolly and funny. A little bird sang in the tree overhead, apples and cherries, roses and honey. Come and sing your song on my finger instead, all so jolly and so funny. The snake coiled up and the bird flew down and sang him the song of Birdie Brown. Little Boy Blue found it tiresome to sit, and he thought he had better walk on a bit. So up he got his way to take, and he said, come along, little bird and snake. And waves of snake o'er the damp leaves passed, and the snake went first, and Birdie Brown last. By Boy Blue's head, with flutter and dart, flew Birdie Brown with his song in his heart. He came where the apples grew red and sweet. Tree, drop me an apple down at my feet. He came where the cherries hung, plump and red. Come to my mouth, sweet kisses, he said. And the boughs bow down, and the apples they dapple, the grass too many for him to grapple. And the cheeriest cherries, with never a miss, fall to his mouth, each a full-grown kiss. He met a little brook singing a song. He said, little brook, you are going wrong. You must follow me, follow, I say. Do as I tell you and come this way. And the songing, forest brook leapt from its bed and after him took. Followed him, followed, and pale and wan, the dead leaves rustled as the water ran. And every bird high upon the bough, and every creature low down below. He called, and the creatures obeyed the call, took their legs and their wings and followed him all. Squirrels that carried their tails like a sack, each on his own little humpy brown back. Householder snails and slugs all tails, and butterflies, flutterbys, ships all sails, and weasels and owsels and mice and larks and owls and reary mice and harky darks all went running and creeping and flowing after the merry boy, fluttering and going. The dappled fawns fawning, the fallow deer following, the swallows and the flies flying and swallowing. Cockifers, hansifers, cockle-eye birds, cockroaches, hens-roaches, cuckoos, and herds. The spider forgot and followed him spinning, and lost all his thread from end to beginning. The gay wasp forgot his rings, and his waist he never had made such in undignified haste. The dragonflies melted in the midst with their hurrying. The mole in his moleskins left his burrowing. The bees went buzzing, so busy and beesy, and the midges in columns so upright and easy. But little Boy Blue was not content, calling for followers still all he went, blowing his horn and beating his drum and crying aloud, come all of you, come. He said to the shadows, come after me, and the shadows began to flicker and flee. And they knew they flew through the wood, all flattering and fluttering over the dead leaves, flickering and muttering. And he said to the wind, come follow, with whistle and pipe and rustle and hollow. And the wind wound round at his desire, as if he had been the gold cock on the spire. And the cock itself flew down from the church, and left the farmers all in the lurch. They run and they fly, they creep and they come, everything, everything, all and some. The very trees, they tugged at their roots, only their feet were too fast in their boots. After him leaning and straining and bending, as on through their boles he kept walking and wending, till out of the wood he burst on a lee, shouting and calling, come after me. And then they rose up with leafy hiss, and stood as if nothing had been amiss. Little Boy Blue sat down on the stone, and the creatures came round him, every one. And he said to the clouds, I want you there. And down they sank through the thin blue air. And he said to the sunset far in the west, come here, I want you, I know best. And the sunset came and stood up on the wold, and burned and glowed in purple and gold. The little Boy Blue began to ponder, what's to be done with all them, I wonder? Then Little Boy Blue, he said quite low, what to do with you all, I'm sure I don't know. Then the clouds clouded down till dismal it grew. The snake sneaked close around Birdie Brown flew. The brook sat up like a snake on its tail, and the wind came up with what will you wail? And all the creatures sat and stared. The mole opened his very eyes and glared. And for rats and bats and all the world and his wife, little Boy Blue was afraid of his life. Then Birdie Brown began to sing, and what he sang was the very thing. You have brought us all hither, Little Boy Blue. Pray, what do you want us all to do? Go away, said Little Boy Blue. I am sure I don't want you. Get away, do. No, 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 no. Yes and no, no, sang Birdie Brown. It mustn't be so. We cannot for nothing come here and away. Give us some work, or else we stay. Oh dear and oh dear, with a sob and a sigh, said Little Boy Blue, and he began to cry. But before he got far, he thought of a thing, and up he stood and spoke like a king. Why do you hustle and jostle and bother? Off with you all, take me back to my mother. The sunset stood at the gates of the west. Follow me, came Birdie Brown's breast. I am going that way as fast as I can, said the brook, as it sank and turned and ran. Back to the woods fled the shadows like ghosts. If we stay, we shall be missed from our posts. Said the wind with a voice that had changed its cheer, I was just going there when you brought me here. That's what I live, said the sack-backed squirrel. And then he turned his sack with a swing and a swirl. Said the cock on the spire, his father's church warden. Said the brook running faster, I run through his garden. Said the mole, 200 worms, there I caught 'em last year, and I'm going again next autumn. Said they all, if that's where you want us to steer for, what on earth or in water did you bring us here for? Never you mind, said Little Boy Blue. That's what I tell you, if that you won't do. I'll get up at once and go home without you. I think I will, I begin to doubt you. He rose, and up rose the snake on its tail, and hissed 3 times, half a hiss, half a wail. Little Boy Blue, he tried to go past him, but wherever he turned sat the snake and faced him. If you don't get out of my way, he said, I tell you, snake, I will break your head. The snake, he neither would go nor come, so he hit him hard with a stick on his drum. The snake fell down as if he were dead. The Little Boy Blue set his foot on his head. And all the creatures they marched before him, and marshalled him home with high cocklorum. And Bertie Brown sang twir twitter twir twee, apples and cherries, roses and honey. Little Boy Blue has listened to me, all so jolly and so funny. Chapter 21, Sal's Nanny. Greetings and salutations, Jeanette. Hello, good evening. Diamond managed, with many blunders, to read this rhyme to his mother. "Isn't it nice, mother?" he said. "Yes, it's pretty," she answered. "I think it means something," returned Diamond. "I'm sure I don't know what," she said. "I wonder if it's the same boy. Yes, it must be the same Little Boy Blue. You know, let me see. How does the rhyme go? Little Boy Blue, come blow your horn." Yes, of course it is, for this one went blowing his horn and beating his drum. He had a drum too. Little Boy Blue, come blow your horn. The sheep's in the meadow and the cow's in the corn. He had to keep them out, you know, but he wasn't minding his work, it goes. Where's the little boy that looks after the sheep? He's under the haystack fast asleep. There, you see, mother. And then, let me see. Who'll go and wake him? No, not I, for if I do, he'll be sure to cry. So I suppose nobody did wake him, and was rather cross, little boy, I dare say, when woke up, and when he did wake of himself, he saw the mischief the cow had done of the corn. Instead of running home to his mother, he ran away into the wood and lost himself. Don't you think that's very likely, mother? I shouldn't wonder, she answered. So you see, he was naughty, for even when he lost himself, he did not want to go home. Any of the creatures would have shown him the way if he had asked it. All but the snake. He followed the snake, you know, and he took him further away. I suppose it was a young one of the same serpent that tempted Adam and Eve. Father was telling about it last Sunday, you remember? Oh, bless the child, said the mother to herself, and then added aloud, finding that Diamond did not go on. Well, what was next? I don't know, mother. I'm sure there's a great deal more, but what it is I can't say. I only know that he killed the snake. I suppose that's what he had a drumstick for. He couldn't do it with his horn. But surely you're not such a silly as to take it all for true, Diamond. I think it must be. It looks true. That killing of the snake looks true. It's what I've got to do so often. His mother looked uneasy. Diamond smiled full in her face and added, when baby cries and won't be happy, and when father and you talk about your troubles, I mean. This did little to reassure his mother, and lest my reader should have his qualms about it too, I venture to remind him once more that Diamond had been to the back of the north wind. Finding she made no reply, Diamond went on. In a week or so, I shall be able to go to the tall gentleman and tell him I can read, and I'll ask him if he can help me to understand the rhyme. But before the week was out, he had another reason for going to see Mr. Raymond. For 3 days, on each of which, at one time or another, Diamond's father was on the same stand near the National Gallery. The girl was not at her crossing, and Diamond got anxious about her. Fearing she must be ill, on the 4th day, not seeing her yet, he said to his father, who had at that moment shut the door of his cab upon a fare, "Father, I want to go and look after the girl. She can't be well." "All right," said his father, "only take care of yourself, Diamond." So saying, he climbed on his box and drove off. He had great confidence in his boy, you see, and would trust him anywhere. But if he had known the kind of place in which the girl lived, he would perhaps have thought twice before allowed him to go alone. Diamond, who did know something of it, had not, however, any fear. From talking to the little girl, he had a good notion of whereabout it was, and he remembered the address well enough. So, by asking his way some 20 times, mostly of policemen, he came at length pretty near the place. The last policeman he questioned looked down upon him from the summit of 6 feet 2 inches and replied with another question, but kindly. "What do you want there, my small kid? It ain't where you was bred, I guess." "No, sir," answered Diamond. "I live in Bloomsbury." "That's a long way off," said the policeman. "Yes, it's a good distance," answered Diamond, "but I find my way about pretty well. Policemen are always kind to me. But what on earth do you want here?" Diamond told him plainly what he was about, and of course the man believed him, for nobody ever disbelieved Diamond. People might think he was mistaken, but they never thought he was telling a story. "It's an ugly place," said the policeman. "Is it far off?" asked Diamond. "No, it's next door almost, but it's not safe." "Nobody hurts me," said Diamond. "I must go with you, I suppose." "Oh, no, please not," said Diamond. "They might think I was going to meddle with them. I ain't, you know." "All right, well, do as you please," said the man, and gave him full directions. Diamond set off, never suspecting that the policeman, who was a kind-hearted man with children of his own, was following him close and watching him round every corner. As he went, all at once he thought he remembered the place, and whether it really was so, or only that he had laid upon the policeman's instructions well in his mind, he went straight for the cellar of old Sal. "He's a sharp little kid, anyhow, for as simple as he looks," said the man to himself. "Not a wrong turn does he take, but old Sal's rum for such a child to pay morning visit to. She's worse when she's sober, when she's half drunk. I've seen her when she'd have torn him to pieces." Happily then for Diamond, old Sal had gone out to get some gin. When he came to her door at the bottom of the area, Stella knocked and received no answer. He laid his ear to the door and thought he heard a moaning within. So he tried the door and found it was not locked. It was a dreary place indeed, and very dark, for the window was below the level of the street and covered with mud, while over the grating, which kept people from falling into the area, stood a chest of drawers placed there by a dealer in second-hand furniture, which shut out almost all the light, and the smell of the place was dreadful. Diamond stood still for a while, for he could see next to nothing, but he heard the moaning plainly enough now. When he got used to the darkness, he discovered his friend lying with closed eyes and a white, suffering face on a heap of little better than rags in the corner of the den. He went up to her and spoke, but she made him no answer. Indeed, she was not in the least aware of his presence, and Diamond saw that he could do nothing for her without help. So, taking a lump of barley sugar from his pocket, which he had brought for her as he came along, and laying it beside her, he left the place, having already made up his mind to go and see the tall gentleman, Mr. Raymond, and ask him to do something for Sal's nanny, as the girl was called. By the time he got up to the area steps, 3 or 4 women who had seen him go down were standing together at the top waiting for him. They wanted his clothes for their children, but they did not follow him down lest Sal should find them there. A moment he appeared, they laid their hands on him, and all began taking for once, for each wanted to get advantage over their neighbors. He told them quite quietly, for he was not frightened, that he had come to see what was the matter with Nanny. "What do you know about Nanny?" said one of them fiercely. "Wait till old Sal comes home, and you'll catch it for going prying into her house when she's out. If you don't give me your jacket directly, I'll go and fetch her." "I can't give you my jacket," said Diamond. "It belongs to my father and mother. You know, it's not mine to give, is it now? You would not think it right to give away what wasn't yours, would you now?" "Give it away? No, that I wouldn't. I'd keep it," she said with a rough laugh. "But if the jacket ain't yours, what right have you to keep it here? Here, Cherry, make haste. It'll be one apiece." They all began to tug at the jacket, while Diamond stooped and kept his arms bent to resist them. Before they had done him or the jacket any harm, however, suddenly all scampered away, and Diamond, looking in the opposite direction, saw the tall policeman coming towards him. "You'd better have let me come with you, little man," he said, looking down at Diamond's face, which was flushed with his resistance. "You came just in the right time." "Thank you," returned Diamond. "They've done me no harm." "They would have had I not hadn't been at hand, though." "Then yes, but you were at hand, you know, so they couldn't." Perhaps the answer was deeper in purport than either Diamond or the policeman knew. They walked away together, Diamond telling his new friend how ill poor Nanny was, and that he was going to let the tall gentleman know. The policeman put him in the nearest way to Bloomsbury, and stepping out in good earnest, Diamond reached Mr. Raymond's door in less than an hour. When he asked if he was at home, the servant in return asked what he wanted. "I want to tell him something, but I can't go and trouble him with such a message as that. He told me to come to him, that is, when I could read, and I can." "How am I to know that?" Diamond stared with astonishment for one moment, then answered, "Oh, why, I just told you. That's how you know it." But this man was made of coarser grain than the policeman. And instead of seeing that Diamond could not tell a lie, he put his answer down as impudence, and saying, "Do you think I am going to take your word for it?" shut the door in his face. Diamond turned and sat down on the doorstep, thinking with himself that the tall gentleman must either come in or come out, and he was therefore in the best possible position for finding him. He had not waited long before the door opened again, and when he looked round, it was only the servant once more. "Get away," he said. "What are you doing on the doorstep?" "Waiting for Mr. Raymond," answered Diamond, getting up. "He's not at home." "Then I'll wait till he comes," returned Diamond, sitting down again with a smile. What the man would have done next, I do not know, but a step sounded from the hall, and when Diamond looked round yet again, there was the tall gentleman. "Who's there, John?" he asked. "I don't know, sir. An impertinent little boy as will sit on the doorstep." "Please, sir," said Diamond, "he told me you weren't at home, and I sat down to wait for you." What?" said Mr. Raymond. John, this won't do. It's a habit of yours to turn away my visitor. Is this a habit to turn away my visitors? There'll be someone else to turn away, I'm afraid, if I find any more of this kind of thing. Come in, my little man. I suppose you've come to claim your sixpence." "No, sir, not that." "What? Can't you read yet?" "Yes, I can now, a little, but I'll come for that next time. I came to tell you about Sal's nanny." "Who is Sal's nanny?" "The girl at the crossing you talked to the same day." "Oh, yes, I remember. What's the matter? Has she got her run over?" Then Diamond told him all. Now Mr. Raymond was one of the kindest men in London. He sent at once to have the horse put to the brougham, took Diamond with him, and drove to the Children's Hospital. There he was well known to everybody, for he was not only a large subscriber, but he used to go and tell the children stories of an afternoon. One of the doctors promised to go and find Nanny and do what could be done, have her brought to the hospital if possible. That same night they sent a litter for her, and as she could be of no use to old Sal until she was better, she did not object to having her removed. So she was soon lying in fever ward for the first time in her life in a nice clean bed. But she knew nothing of the whole affair. She was too ill to know anything. Chapter 22. Mr. Raymond took Diamond home with him, stopping at the Mews to tell his mother that he would send him back soon. Diamond ran in with his message himself, and when he reappeared, he and his hand the torn and the crumpled book which North Wind had given him. "Ah, I see," said Mr. Raymond. "You are going to claim your sixpence now." "I wasn't thinking of that so much as about another thing," said Diamond. "There's a rhyme in this book I can't quite understand, and I want you to tell me what it means, if you please." "Well, I will if I can," answered Mr. Raymond. "You shall read it to me when we get home, and then I shall see." Still, with good many blunders, Diamond did read it after a fashion. Mr. Raymond took the little book and read it over again. Now, Mr. Raymond was a poet himself, and so, although he had never been at the back of the North Wind, he was able to understand the poem pretty well. But before saying anything about it, he read it over aloud, and Diamond thought he understood it much better already. "I'll tell you what I think it means," he said. "It means that people may have their way for a while if they like, but it will get them into such troubles they'll wish they hadn't had it." "I know," said Diamond, "like the poor cabman next door. He drinks too much." "Just so," returned Mr. Raymond. "But when people want to do right, things about them will try to help them. Only they must kill the snake, you know." "I was sure the snake had something to do with it," cried Diamond triumphantly. A good deal more talk followed, and Mr. Raymond gave Diamond his sixpence. "What will you do with it?" he asked. "Take it home to my mother," he answered. "She has a teapot, such a black one, with a broken spout, and she keeps all her money in it. Ain't much, but she saves it up and buys shoes for me. And there's baby coming on famously, and he'll want shoes soon, and every sixpence is something. Ain't it, sir?" "To be sure, my man. I hope you always make as good of use of your money." "I hope so, sir," said Diamond. "And here's a book for you, full of pictures and stories and poems. I wrote it myself, chiefly for the children of the hospital where I hope Nanny is going. I don't mean I printed it, you know. I made it," added Mr. Rainius. "Shall I try to tell them, or shall I not? I will give them one very short answer. It means one who understands things without any other body telling him what they mean. God makes a few such now and then to teach the rest of us." "Do you like riddles? Do you like riddles?" asked Mr. Raymond, turning over the leaves of his own book. I don't know what a riddle is," said Diamond. "It's something that means something else, and you've got to find out what something else is." Mr. Raymond liked old-fashioned riddle best, and had written a few, one of which he read now. "I have only one foot, but thousands of toes. My one foot stands, but never goes. I have many arms, and they're a mighty all, and hundreds of fingers large and small. From the ends of my fingers my beauty grows. I breathe with my hair, and I drink with my toes. I grow bigger and bigger about the waist, and yet I'm always very tight-laced. None e'er saw me eat. I've no mouth to bite, yet I eat all day in the full sunlight. In the summer with song I shake and quiver, but in winter I fast and groan and shiver." "Do you know what that means, Diamond?" he asked when he had finished. "No, indeed I don't," answered Diamond. "Then you can read it for yourself and think over it, and see if you can find out," said Mr. Raymond, giving him the book. "And now you'd better go home with your mother. When you've found the riddle, you can come again." If Diamond had to find out the riddle in order to see Mr. Raymond again, I doubt if he would ever have seen him. "Oh, then, I think I hear some little reader say, he could not have been a genius, for a genius finds out things without being told." I answer, geniuses find out truths, not tricks. And if you do not understand that, I am afraid you must be content to wait until you grow older to know more. Chapter 23. The Early Bird. When Diamond got home, he found his father at home already, sitting by the fire and looking rather miserable, for his head ached and he felt sick. He had been doing night work of late, and it had not agreed with him, so he had given it up, but not in time, for he had taken some kind of fever. The next day he was forced to keep his bed, and his wife nursed him, and Diamond attended to the baby. If he had not been ill, it would have been delightful to have him home. And the first day Diamond sang more songs than ever to baby, and his father listened with some pleasure. But the next he could not bear even Diamond's sweet voice, and was very ill indeed. So Diamond took the baby into his own room, and had no end of quiet games with him there. If he did pull all his bedding on the floor, it did not matter, for he kept baby very quiet, and made the bed himself again, and slept in it with baby all the next night, and many nights thereafter. But long before his father got well, his mother's savings were all but gone. She did not say a word about it in hearing of her husband, lest she should distress him, and one night, when she could not help crying, she came into Diamond's room, that his father might not hear her. She thought Diamond was asleep, but he was not. When he heard her sobbing, he was frightened and said, "Is father worse, mother?" "No, Diamond," she answered, as well as she could. "He's a good deal better." "Then what are you crying for, mother?" "Because my money is almost gone," she replied. "Oh, mammy, you make me think of little poem baby and I learned out of Northwind's book today. Don't you remember how I bothered you about some of the words?" "Yes, child," said his mother heedlessly, thinking only of what she should do after tomorrow. Diamond began and repeated the poem, for he had a wonderful memory. A little bird sat on the edge of her nest. Her yellow beaks slept as sound as tops. That day she had done her very best, and had filled every one of the little crops. She had filled her own just over full, and hence she was feeling a little dull. "Oh dear," she sighed, as she sat with her head sunk in her chest, and no neck at all, while her crop struck out like a feather bed turned inside out, and rather small. "But what shall I do if things don't reform? I don't know where there's a single worm. I've had 20 today, and the children 5 each, besides a few flies and some very fat spiders. No one will say I don't do as I preach. I'm one of the best. I'm one of the best of bird providers, but where's the use? We want a storm. I don't know where there's a single worm." "There's 5 in my crop," said a wee bird, which woke at the voice of his mother's pain. "I know where there's 5," and with a word he tucked in his head and went off again. "The folly of childhood," sighed his mother, "has always been my especial bother." The yellow beaks they slept on and on. They never had heard of the boggy tomorrow. But the mother sat outside making her moan. She'll soon have to beg or steal or borrow, for she never can tell the night before where she shall find one red worm more. The fact, as I say, was she'd had too many. She couldn't sleep, and she called it virtue. Motherly foresight, affection any, name you may call it, that will not hurt you. So it was late ere she tucked her head in, and she slept so late it was almost a sin. But the little fellow, who knew of 5, nor troubled his head about any more, woke very early, felt quite alive, and wanted a 6th to add to his store. He pushed his mother and greedy elf, then thought he had better try for himself. When his mother awoke and had rubbed her eyes, feeling less like a bird and more like a mole, she saw him, fancy with what surprise, dragging a huge worm out of a hole. 'Twas the same hero the proverb took form, "'Tis the early bird that catches the worm." "There, mother," said Diamond, as he finished. "Ain't it funny? I wish you were like that little bird, Diamond, and could catch worms for yourself," said his mother, as she rose to go out and look after her husband. Diamond lay awake for a few minutes, thinking that he could do to catch worms if it was such a simple little trouble to make up his mind, however, and still less to go to sleep after it. We can do one more chapter. Chapter 24. He got up in the morning as soon as he heard the men moving in the yard. He tucked his little brother so that he could not tumble out of bed, and then went out, leaving the door open, so that if he should cry, his mother might hear him at once. When he got into the yard, he found the stable door had just opened. "I'm the early bird, I think," he said to himself. "I hope I shall catch the worm." He would not ask anyone to help him, fearing his project might meet with disapproval and opposition. With great difficulty, but with the help of a broken chair he brought down from his bedroom, he managed to put the harness on Diamond. If the old horse had the least objection to the proceeding, of course, he could not have done it. But even when it came to the bridle, he opened his mouth for the bit, just as if he had been taking the apple which Diamond sometimes gave him. He fastened the cheek strap very carefully, just in the usual hole for the fear of choking his friend, or else letting the bit get amongst his teeth. It was a job to get the saddle on, but with a chair he managed it. If old Diamond had had an education in physics to equal that of the camel, he would have knelt down and to let him put it on his back, but that was more than could be expected of him. And then Diamond had to creep quite under him to get hold of the girth. The collar was almost the worst part of the business. But there Diamond could help Diamond. He held his head very low till his little master had got it over and turned it round, and then he lifted his head and shook it on to his shoulders. The yoke was rather difficult, but when he had laid the traces over the horse's neck, the weight was not too much for him. He got him right at last and led him out of the stable. But this time there were several of the men watching him, but they would not interfere. They were so anxious to see how he would get over the various difficulties. They followed him as far as the stable door, and there stood watching him again as he put the horse between the shafts, got them up one after the other into the loops, fastened the traces of the belly band, the breeching, and the reins. Then he got his whip. The moment he mounted the box, the men broke into a hearty cheer of delight at his success, but they would not let him go without a general inspection of the harness, and although they found it right, for not a buckle had to be shifted, they never allowed him to do it for himself again all the time his father was ill. The chair brought his mother to the window, and there she saw her little boy setting out alone with the cab in the grey of the morning. She tugged at the window, but it was stiff, and before she could open it, Diamond, who was in a great hurry, was out of the mews and almost out of the street. She called, "Diamond, Diamond," but there was no answer except from Jack. "Never fear for him, ma'am," said Jack. "It only a devil as would hurt him, and there ain't so many of 'em as folk would have you believe. A boy of diamond size as can harness a horse to other diamond size, and put him to, right as a trivet. If he do upset the cab, I'll fall on his feet, ma'am." "But he won't upset the cab, will he, Jack?" "Not he, ma'am. Leastways, he won't go for to do it." "I know as much as that myself. What do you mean?" "I mean, he's a little likely to do it in the oldest man in the stable. How is the governor today, ma'am?" "A good deal better, thank you," she answered, closing the window in some fear lest her husband should have been made anxious by the news of Diamond's expedition. He knew pretty well, however, what his boy was capable of, and although not quite easy, was less anxious than his mother. But as the evening drew on, the anxiety of both of them increased, and every sound of wheels made his father raise himself in bed, and his mother peep out the window. Diamond had resolved to go straight to the cab stand where he was best known, and never to crawl for fear of getting annoyed by idlers before he got across Oxford Street. However, he was hailed by a man who wanted to catch a train, and was in too great a hurry to think about the driver. Having carried him to King's Cross in a good time, and got a good fare in return, he set off in great spirits and reached the stand in safety. He wasn't the first there after all. As the men arrived, they all greeted him kindly, and inquired after his father. "Ain't you afraid the old horse running away with you?" asked one. "No, he wouldn't run away with me," answered Diamond. "He knows I'm getting the shillings for father, or if he did, he would only run home." "Well, you're a plucky one. You're for all your girly looks," said the man, "and I wish you luck." "Thank you, sir," said Diamond. "I'll do what I can. I came to the old place, you see, because I knew you would let me have my turn here." In the course of the day, one man did try to cut him out, but he was a stranger, and the shout of the rest of them raised let him see it would not do, and made him so far ashamed besides that he went away crawling. Once, in a block, a policeman came up to him and asked him for his number. Diamond showed him his father's badge, saying with a smile, "Father's ill at home, and so I came out with the cab. There's no fear of me. I can drive. Besides, the old horse could go alone." "Just as well, I dare say. You're a pair of 'em. But you are a rum run of a cabby, ain't you?" said policeman. "I don't know as I ought to let you go." "I ain't done nothing," said Diamond. It's not my fault. I'm no bigger. I'm big enough for my age." "That's what it is," said the man. "You ain't a fit." "How do you know that?" asked Diamond, with his usual smile and turning his head like a little bird. "Why, how are you to get out of this truck now, when it begins to move?" Just you get up on the box," said Diamond, "and I'll show you. There, that van's moving now. Jump up." The policeman did as Diamond told him, and was soon satisfied that the little fellow could, in fact, drive. "Well," he said, as he got down again, "I don't know as I should be right to interfere. Good luck to you, fellow, my little man." "Thank you, sir," said Diamond, and drove away. In a few minutes a gentleman hailed him. "Are you the driver of this cab?" he asked. "Yes, sir," said Diamond, showing his badge, of which he was very proud. "You're the youngest cabman I've ever seen. How am I to know you won't break all my bones?" "I would rather break all of my bones," said Diamond, "but if you're afraid, never mind me. I shall soon get another fare." "I'll risk it," said the gentleman, and opening the door for himself, he jumped in. He was going a good distance, and soon found that Diamond got him over the ground well. Now, when Diamond had only to go straight ahead, he had not to mind so much what he was about. His thoughts always turned to the riddle Mr. Raymond had set him, and this gentleman looked so clever that he fancied he must be able to read it for him. He had given up all hope of finding out for himself, and then he could not plague his father about it when he was ill. He had thought of the answer himself, but fancied it could not be the right one, for to see how it all fitted required some knowledge of physiology. So when he reached the end of his journey, he got down very quickly, and with his head just looking in the window, said as the gentleman gathered his gloves and newspapers, "Please, sir, can you tell me the meaning of a riddle?" "You must tell me the riddle first," answered the gentleman, amused. Diamond repeated the riddle. "Oh, that's easy enough," he returned. "It's a tree. Well, it ain't got no mouth, sure enough. But how then does it eat all day long?" "It sucks in its food through the tiniest holes in its leaves," he answered. "Its breath is its food, and it can't do it. It can't do it except in the daylight." "Thank you, sir, thank you," returned Diamond. "I'm sorry I couldn't find it out for myself. Mr. Raymond would have been better pleased with me." "But you needn't tell him anyone told you." Diamond gave him a stare which came from the very back of the north wind, where that kind of thing is unknown. "That would be cheating," he said at last. "Ain't you a cabby, then?" "Cabbies don't cheat." "Don't they?" "I am of a different opinion." "I'm sure my father don't." "What's your fare, young innocent?" "Well, I think a good deal over 3 miles. That's 2 shillings. Only father says 6pence a mile is too little, though we can't ask for more." "You're a deep one, but I think you're wrong. It's over 4 miles. Not much, but it is." "Then that's half a crown," said Diamond. "Well, here's 3 shillings. Will that do?" "Thank you kindly, sir. I'll tell my father how good you were to me. First to tell me my riddle, then to put me right about the distance, and then to give me 6pence over. It'll help father to get well again, it will." "I hope it may, my man. I shouldn't wonder if you were as good as you look, after all." As Diamond returned, he drew up at the stand he had never been on before. It was time to give Diamond his bag of chopped beans and oats. The men got about him and began to chaff him. He took it all good humoredly until one of them, who was ill-conditioned fellow, began to tease old Diamond by poking him roughly in the ribs and making general game of him that he could not bear, and the tears came in his eyes, and he undid the nose bag, put it in the boot, and was just going to mount and drive away, when the fellow interfered and would not let him get up. Diamond endeavored to persuade him, and was very civil. One moment. And was very civil, but he would have his fun out of him. As he said, in a few minutes, a group of idle boys had assembled, and Diamond found himself in a very uncomfortable position. Another cab drew up at the stand, and the driver got off and approached the assemblage. "What's up here?" he asked, and Diamond knew the voice. It was that of the drunken cabman. "Do you see this young oyster who pretends to drive a cab?" said his enemy. "Yes, I do see him, and I sees you too. You'd better leave him alone. He ain't no oyster. He's an angel come down on his own business. You be off, or I'll be nearer you than quite agreeable." The drunken cabman was a tall, stout man, who did not look one to take liberties with. If he's a friend of yours," said the other, drawing back. Diamond got out the nose bag again. Old Diamond should have his feet out now. "Yes, he's a friend of mine. One of the best I ever had. It's a pity he ain't a friend of yourn. You'd be better for it, but it ain't no fault of his'n." When Diamond went home at night, he carried him with £1, 1 shilling, and sixpence, besides a few coppers extra, which had followed some of the fares. His mother had got very anxious indeed, so much so that she was almost afraid, when she did hear the sound of his cab, to go when look, unless she should be yet again disappointed, and should break down before her husband. But there was the old horse, and there was the cab all right, and there was Diamond on the box, his pale face looking triumphant as a full moon in the twilight. When he drew up at the stable door, Jack came out, and after a good many friendly questions and congratulations, said, "You go in to your mother, Diamond. I'll put up old Oss. I'll take care of on him. He do deserve some small attention, he do." "Thank you, Jack," said Diamond, and bounded into the house and into the arms of his mother, who was waiting for him at the top of the stair. The poor anxious woman led him into his own room, sat down on his bed, took him on her lap as if he had been a baby, and cried. "How's father?" asked Diamond, almost afraid to ask. "Better, my child," she answered, "but uneasy about you, my dear. Didn't you tell him I was the early bird gone out to catch the worm? That was what put it in your head, was it, you monkey?" said his mother, beginning to get better. "That or something else," answered Diamond, so very quietly, and his mother held his head back and stared in his face. "Well, of all my children," she said, and said no more. "And here's my worm," resumed Diamond. But to see her face as he poured the shillings and sixpence and pence into her lap, she burst out crying a second time, and ran with the money to her husband. And how pleased he was! It did him no end of good. But while he was counting the coins, Diamond turned to Baby, who was lying awake in his cradle, sucking his precious thumb, and took him up, saying, "Baby, baby, I haven't seen you for a whole year." And then he began to sing to him as usual. And what he sang was this, for he was too happy either to make a song of his own or to sing sense. It was one out of Mr. Raymond's book. "Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. He played such a merry tune that the cow went mad with the pleasure she had, and jumped right over the moon. But then, don't you see, before that could be, the moon had come down and listened. The little dog hearkened so loud that he barked. There's nothing like it, there isn't. Hey diddle diddle went the cat and the fiddle. Hey diddle diddle dee dee, the dog laughed at the sport, till his cough cut him short. It was hey diddle diddle oh me, and back came the cow with a merry, merry low, for she'd humbled the man in the moon. The dish got excited, the spoon was delighted, the dish waltzed away with the spoon. But the man in the moon, coming back too soon from the famous town of Norwich, caught up the dish, said, "It's just what I wish, to hold my cold plum porridge," gave the cow a rat-tat, flung water on the cat, and sent him away like a rocket, said, "Oh moon, there you are," got into her car, and went off with the spoon in his pocket. Hey ho, diddle diddle, the wet cat and wet fiddle. They made such a caterwauling that the cow, in a fright, stood bolt upright, bellowing now and bawling, and the dog on his tail stretched his neck with a wail. But ho ho, said the man in the moon, no more in the south shall I burn my mouth, for I've found a dish and a spoon. And that is where we end for the evening. We will come back next week and continue to read. Let me just go through. Thank you for the lovely comments. Hello, Lauren Morgan Richards. Hello, Sean. Hello, Mary Jane. Hello, Catherine. Hello, Jeanette. Hello, Sean. Thank you, Shrouded Grove, for that lovely message. And is it Elhazar? Elizar? Yes, you did see me again on Ghost Adventures. Anyway, thank you for everyone who is joining me now and everyone who is joining me in the future. Make certain to keep your updates pretty handy because stay close informed, as I have some things that will be coming along down the pike. Yes, thank you, Catherine. It is my pleasure to read to you. Again, if you would like to get a reading, I am running a special of 20% off this month. So make certain to contact me over at thegentlemanpsychic.com and you can save 20%. So if you have always wanted a reading and now is the time. So message me over on the Gentleman Psychic and mention it here that I said I was going to give 20%. So mention it and get the 20%. Anyway, my loves, thank you so much. I love each and every one of you. I appreciate you, and I bid you a most pleasant night rest. Until next time, I have been your host, Richard Léo Lillard, the Gentleman Psychic. Good night. Thank you. I like that. Thank you, Dan Lore. Thank you.